It has finally happened. I have officially done it. I have the power to design iPhones from outside of Apple. Everyone thought I would have to get hired and on Apple's payroll to influence the iPhone design this much. But after making dozens of videos begging Apple to eliminate the wobble from the iPhone by copying the Pixel camera bump, increasing the size of the visor to make it sit pretty flat on a table, I've convinced them enough now through the power of my YouTube videos to copy the Pixel camera bump design, and you can all thank me later. Let's begin. This leak came from Majin Buu, who has definitely not a spotless track record, but it got a lot more interesting to me once 9to5Mac also picked it up, because Chance, one of the great writers over there, was mentioning that this design that Majin Buu tweeted out actually aligns with an earlier leaked design that he received, meaning that while yes, this is very early in the iPhone development cycle, there's a very real chance that this is at least going through the prototyping phase, and Apple is experimenting with it a bit for real. And like I've mentioned before, most of the time mass production for iPhone models don't start until around May, which is, you know, a few months before they're unveiled, which is why I'm hesitant to say this is confirmed, because there definitely could be changes. There's likely a couple different prototype designs they're toying around with, but the more I think about this visor bump design, which again, I've been begging Apple to adopt for years, so I'm probably getting too overly optimistic or hopeful for this design to be real, but particularly when it comes to the slimmer iPhone 17 Air concept, I think it actually makes quite a bit of sense. You know, if you think about for a second how thick our iPhones currently are, especially when referencing the cameras, that camera bump is very, very difficult to slim down, and as Apple is trying to shrink more components inside this slimmer iPhone, which is supposed to have Apple-designed modems, and a lot of the reports have been saying it's only going to have one camera, which would basically align with this design that we're all seeing already. I could totally see Apple wanting to cheat a little bit and pull what they did back with the 12-inch MacBook and early MacBook Air days with the wedge design and kind of try to fit a lot of the longer, skinnier components into the bulk of the iPhone footprint. But then if there's any other components, particularly like the camera lens and maybe some other components that are known to get pretty hot, or maybe it's a modem, maybe it's an antenna of some kind that they feel like needs to be externally mounted because you can't fit that little antenna on the side of the chassis anymore. You stuff all of that within a long skinny camera bump at the top, and then you don't have to worry about MagSafe compatibility. That will all still work just fine. And you can fit all of those bulkier components into one singular place that prevents the iPhone from wobbling when it's laid flat on a table. Now, I feel like I've mostly eliminated that anyway by just using a case that has a kickstand, and then Face ID continues to work, which is really helpful. So I'm not trying to say that this design alone is going to get me to upgrade. In fact, it would probably be a decent camera downgrade in many ways. No ultra-wide lens, no telephoto lens. That's not super appealing to me. But remember, the iPhone 17 and 17 Air are rumored to be the first non-Pro iPhones to actually get ProMotion displays, which is pretty cool. But at what cost, of course? We're not expecting the battery life to get much better. If anything, we're hoping it doesn't tank substantially thanks to Apple's new modems. And also, there's been talk of Apple scrapping stereo speakers on this model, just for the sake of saying, look how thin we were able to make an iPhone, which I gotta admit, yeah, the idea is still growing on me a bit. I'm like, well, that would be somewhat interesting to see. We're not gonna get our mini iPhones because the sales weren't all that great for them, but if we can get a big iPhone that's really, really light, substantially lighter than all of the rest of the iPhones, that might be somewhat interesting to check out, mostly because all the other iPhones sound kind of boring and, not much to talk about. Before I get carried away with the iPhone 17 Air leaks, I should address what a lot of you have probably already commented. Maybe this is the iPhone SE 4 that we're seeing and not an iPhone 17, but again, that's not what Majin Buu is saying, and that's not what 9to5Mac is reporting on either. Based on the size of the Apple logo in perspective to the camera bump, I don't think the iPhone SE is going to look that big. Again, it's rumored to be a 6.1-inch iPhone, whereas the iPhone 17 Air is rumored to be 6.6 6.7 inches, more like a plus-sized iPhone. So I feel like that would be a quite stark difference between the two. However, yes, there already have been some iOS references to a 4th generation iPhone SE. So at least internally, that's what they're calling it. Maybe they pull a Apple Vision Pro at the last second and change the name for the public release to 16E, but at least within support documents, there have been photos of the iPhone SE4, and they don't give away too much, but you can zoom in on them and tell that it has a dynamic island, which is a bit of a surprise. We all thought the iPhone SE4 was going to have a notch and be a lot more like an iPhone 14, but just with one camera. But no, it's sounding more and more like Apple might be going with one camera on the SE4 and also one camera on the iPhone 17 Air to save on cost or on space, I suppose. But what I have the hardest time believing with the single camera report of the 17 Air, you know, it makes sense for the SE4, and I'm honestly quite surprised they're willing to put a dynamic island on there. That just makes it sound like way too good of a deal. I guess we'll never find out how the Apple Intelligence animation would work with a notch, but not having an ultra-wide lens on the 17 Air is kind of hard to believe after Apple made so much hype around spatial videos. So I'm wondering if maybe this year, thanks to the power of the Apple A19 chip or whatever, they're gonna say that they figured out a way using AI and machine learning to unlock spatial videos with a single lens, and maybe to keep the rest of the iPhone lineup consistent with that visor design, we'll see a pixel-style camera visor on the other iPhone 17 models as well. And maybe this will be the first iPhone camera bump redesign we've had in like 6 freaking years, which I would be totally fine with because I'm sick of the stovetop camera. You can see it behind me how long it's been around, and I'm just tired of it. It never looked very good. The lenses are not equal distance from each other. Stop pushing that narrative. And it would eliminate the wobble when people put their phones on a table. I'm tired of it knocking back and forth. And I know some of you have said, oh, there's no way this camera visor can be real because the Face ID sensors take up too much space on the inside of the phone. Well, look at the photo a little bit closer and you'll realize that it's not that hard to taper up the glass or the aluminum on the back of the iPhone a little bit so that there's still room for the Face ID sensors, and the camera itself and the visor just have to be slightly lower. And Apple loves their big exaggerated radii on corners and on camera bumps. They can easily move the camera module a little bit lower so that the Face ID sensors have space in there as well. That's all I'm saying. And if I'm wrong and this turns out not to be the iPhone 17 Air, then I will literally shave off my middle knuckle hairs. That's how convinced I am that these reports and leaks are real. There's a lot at stake with this one, alright guys? What do you guys think of these leaks? Do you believe them? Do you not believe them? Will the SE4 have a dynamic island? Will the iPhone 17 Air look just like a Pixel phone? Will Trump eliminate the EV tax credit? Wait, that's the wrong channel. All your thoughts, drop them in the comments down below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.